Hey guys, and welcome back to the Layah Heilpern show, powered by Icon Plus. So Icon is excited to announce IconFi. So it's a super easy staking and earning service where you can receive yield on Icon, Ethereum, Bitcoin, Tether. And if you do join early, you can actually get up to 20% fixed term APY. So always great news coming out of Icon there. I also want to say thank you to my sponsors, BlockFi. So as you guys probably know already, I use them. I earn up to 8.6% interest on my USDC. USDC is a stable coin pegged to the US dollar. So there you go. If you're interested in that, you can actually get, I think at the moment, around $250 if you join. So I'll leave a link for that in the comments, in the description, in all the places you'd go to find a link. So I'll leave that there. And before we start the show, because I do have a very, very exciting guest, I also want to say a quick shout out to CoinFlip. So CoinFlip are doing some incredible work across the States to push Bitcoin mass adoption. They have nearly 1,000 ATMs across 45 different states, giving everybody access to Bitcoin. So I think that's some incredible stuff that they're doing. So today I have a really cool guest, somebody who is actually, and I'm not sure if he knows this, one of my favorite people in the space. It is CZ. How are you doing?
Hello, Layah. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. I didn't know that. Your favorite person.
You are, and let me tell you why you're one of my favorite people in the space. So I think, a lot of the time, these big CEOs, big founders, I find that there's quite like a distance between them and the community, and there's not that interaction that you would like. And I find that you're one of the most, loads of people say this, you're one of the most active people on Twitter. You reply to people, we can interact with you. And I think it's such a small community. So it kind of seems odd when there isn't that connection. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think, well, for me, it's really interesting as well. So I learned a lot from our users. It's a good way for me to interact. I'm not a socializing hub. So like many people, like some hubs know a lot of people. I actually don't know that many people, so I don't really socialize with that many people, but I just find it easy on Twitter to talk to our users and talk to our community, just talk to our supporters. It's just easy. So yeah, for me, it's pretty simple, yeah.
No, it's really nice. And, as somebody in the space, I totally appreciate it. And I know loads of people do appreciate it as well. But I've got loads of questions for you because loads of people know you as CZ, the guy from Binance and all this stuff. But I want to know more about you. So how would you define yourself?
So yeah, I would just think of myself as an ex-developer turned entrepreneur. Kind of have a little bit of an international experience in my early days, and then got lucky, have a really strong team that executed well, and then now I have a chance to help increase the freedom of money all around the world. This is a great opportunity. I'm really humbled by it. So that's who I am. So I'm doing my thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You are doing your thing, and you're obviously very successful. And, even before crypto, you were doing a lot of stuff in tech. So give me 3 principles that you would say you've learned from all of this that you can sort of take with you. And I guess people who are also looking to get into crypto, looking to maybe do something like yourself, what are 3 main principles?
I think for me, I think the first principle for myself, I do have a couple of principles I could share. Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know if those principles will really help or not. But I do try to be fair in life. So whatever business partner we work with, I do, like, this might sound cheesy. We do try to structure win-win deals. I do view most corporations to be long-term. So we want to be long-term successful. We want to be long-term benefit. When you enter a long-term deal, typically you want it to work for both sides, because otherwise it's not going to last. Same thing as when we hire people who work in the team, and when we work with external people, etc. So also how we treat our users, our community, etc. So I think trying to be fair is probably the first principle that I really recommend people, and I do try to follow that fairly strictly myself. I never try to take advantage of people. I also don't try to let people take advantage of us, but sometimes it happens, but that's okay. I think that's the first one. The second one is probably just being really, really focused. So I try to remove all distractions, anything that's not really important. So I have no car, I don't have to take care of insurance, fixing cars, parking, I don't have to worry about all of that. I don't really have a lot of time-consuming hobbies, so I don't really play games anymore. So I just really, and I don't have any external investments outside of Binance. I never invest personally. Binance as an organization invests in different type of organizations, and we have a team to do that. So I don't have anything personally. I don't have any personal investments. I don't even have a house anymore. So
Oh, wow.
I keep everything very simple. When I go to a restaurant, if I couldn't pick up something I like in the first 5 seconds, I just pick the third item on the menu. So I try to make So I just try to make everything really, really simple so that I can focus on one thing, which is Binance right now. So so that's the second principle. So I remove a lot of the distractions that most people may have. The third one is probably in this industry, just got to be really positive. So number one is being positive and being fair is slightly different. So we never try to target anyone. We're not against anyone, any organization, any government, any regulator. We're not into that. And we're just trying to build value. We're just trying to contribute what we can into, like, this may sound kind of cheesy, but honestly, we're just trying to contribute to this industry, contribute to society. If we don't have that such strong abilities, then we'll just contribute a little bit. If now we can contribute a little bit more. So so just being positive, and also on a day like this, being positive is pretty important. So I would say that's probably the three things I would say that are really important to me, and I try to follow them to the best extent I can.
Yeah, I think those things are really important, and it's not cringy in the slightest. It's not cliche. I think that's insane. So you don't have a car and you don't have an actual house that you own, essentially.
No, I don't have a car. I don't have a house. Life is much simpler, so I don't have to take care of. I had a house at one point. It took me 6 months to sell it. It was like so much trouble. So now I don't have to worry about it. I just, I rent. I live in hotels. It's fine. It works.
Oh my gosh. That's really interesting, because they sort of say that is the new world. There's this idea that you've got to get on the property ladder, but that seems to be this old kind of mentality.
I think it depends on lifestyle. So if you live in one place for a while, I think having a place is good. And if you have, like, raising kids and stuff like that. But for me, like, I travel so much, and even if I buy a house or a car, I'm not going to be using it 90% of the time. It's just going to sit there and rust. And then, like, I'm still going to be using Uber, Grab, and all these other ride-sharing services. I'm still going to be staying in hotels, etc. So for me, it doesn't really help, and it just creates a lot of mental baggage that I need to take care of. For me, it's much easier without those things.
Yeah, I absolutely hear you. I think that's really interesting, and I think I'm definitely going to consider that, because I'm always moving around as well, and I'm thinking houses, cars, and this. But you mentioned something really interesting. You said not to be taken advantage of and being fair. So I want to learn a little bit more about this, because I think, not just in work, but in life in general, there's this really difficult line between sort of being fair, being honest, and being kind. And then that kindness can sort of be taken for granted or can be mistaken for weakness. So how do you find that line?
I think number one is, like, for anybody I interact with personally or have a work relationship of any kind, either they're working with as part of Binance or as a partner with Binance, etc. We do try to structure deals that work for both sides. So like, for example, if my team member says, like, CZ, we got this really good deal to work with this other entity, and this is why it's so good for us, I always ask, why is it good for them? So I need to understand that deal structure so that it's good for both sides. It makes sense. So things have to make sense. And then I believe that, look, if the other party asks for a lot that we don't think is fair, then we just walk away. It's a free world in most places. So we just walk away, and we try not to be taken advantage of. There are certain times where we do have to defend ourselves a little bit, and by sometimes even, like, fighting back a little bit. But if for Binance or for myself, that's almost always because somebody attacked us first. So when those things happen, then we have no choice. But it's not something we want to do. It's not something I enjoy. But look, sometimes you have to. So yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of fair and all of that, I think you can absolutely sort of, like, hold your word to that, because I remember you guys were hacked, was it in 2019? And it was like that 7 Bitcoin reserves or whatever it was. I don't remember, but you had that reserves and you were able to, give that back to your customers.
Yes. So so we always want to protect our users and being very fair to them. So if we get hacked, that's our responsibility. We should cover it. And also 2 years ago, there was a hacker that attacked us, and then we put out a bounty. That's kind of like a aggression from us, but we were attacked first, and we actually we just granted that bounty, like $250K US worth of I think they took BNB. So we just granted that recently, and so that's because somebody was actually 2 guys actually helped us track those guys down, and through proper legal procedures, they were actually put on some sanction list. So that's not a situation where we had to defend ourselves by putting out a bounty to hunt for some hackers. But we would not proactively do that unless we're attacked. So we were attacked 2 years ago. So yeah.
Yeah, you have to do what you got to do to protect yourselves and your customers. And I think you guys, you show that you do that. But moving on a little bit, I want to go back to your early life and understand how you became CZ. So you grew up in China, but then you moved to Canada. And from what I've read, your father was a professor who was exiled from China. So if you don't mind me asking, I'm really interested to know what happened.
Sure. So I can go a little bit more detailed than what I've went to previously. So probably people will hear a little bit more. So I become CZ because most people can't really pronounce my name very well. So that's probably why. So I was born in China. I moved to Canada with my parents when I was 12. And at the time, my father was a professor. So my father's life is actually pretty interesting. So my father got into university, and the first year he got into university was the Cultural Revolution in China. So they basically canceled all universities, said, look, go back to the farmland, learn the core values of life, learn how to farm land. And my father came from like the countryside. So 6 years later, he didn't attend a single class. He was trying to study on his own. And then after the Cultural Revolution, he applied for a master's degree in University of British Columbia. So that's in Vancouver, Canada. And so he actually got accepted because he was studying on his own. So my father's kind of a bookworm, and then he went to continue to study a master program and then a PhD. So my father was always like a student of some type, and then eventually became like a professor. So when I went to Canada, that was just before he got his PhD degree. This is when I was 12. So we were living on his master's program, I don't know, salary or professor income. Not professor, like his professor was giving him some income. So it wasn't much. We were not super poor, but we were not rich by any means. So like we were like very, very modest. So that's kind of like my sort of growing up. That's my father's. That's kind of my father's like life in a very simplified version. So my father's always a bookworm, and he's always like an academic, not very good in business. But he's like always just sort of lived a very simple life. So I kind of came from that. My father did encourage me to work from very early on. So I worked at McDonald's was my first job. I think I was 14, 15. So that was actually under the legal age of working in Canada, which is 16. But McDonald's has some kind of exception that they are able to take young kids, young teenagers to work, and that was a really, really good experience. So I worked really early, and then I basically had different jobs ever since then. Not continuously. When I was like in school, when I was like in college, in school, like when I study, and then in the summer I work. So I've traveled quite a lot, even as so I moved in China and then moved to Canada, and then went to in Canada, I moved into different places. So I was always like I never really stayed in one city for very long. And I was moving between countries as well. So when I was in college, my second intern job, I went to Japan, Tokyo, to work. So I was like traveling in different countries. So I think that international experience actually really, really helped me now. Before, I never realized how valuable that was. But looking back now, having that international sort of exposure really helped me to get into crypto, understand Bitcoin, understand cross-border remittances, transactions. So yeah, I mean, a lot. In a short version, like kind of long already, but but that's kind of what shaped me in my early years.
Yeah, I think you make two really interesting points, right? So it's kind of moving from country to country. Your family and you probably both experience the issue, with money. It's an absolute nightmare having to, change your money here, change your money there. You can't get a bank account and all this stuff. So I think that's actually insane because you probably really felt that growing up. And now, you're one of the biggest people in this space driving it forward, So you must have really felt the need for that. But then as well, you're obviously really international. I often find that a lot of the time people who haven't left their own country, for whatever reason, sort of unfortunately lack a certain kind of worldview just because they haven't had the opportunity to see anything else. So, when you're working in this space and you're dealing with all these different people, you've had that experience, which I think is really cool. But I'm interested in your father. What happened? Why was he exiled from China?
So he wasn't really exiled, but basically due to the Cultural Revolution, he didn't spend a single day in university. And then when the Cultural Revolution was over, there was a program there was a trend or a program for people to apply to go overseas, especially for the academics. And so my father applied, and so it was actually a pretty difficult process, even for my. We can get into a little bit more detail. So my father went to Canada in 1984. I went to Canada 6 years later, 5-6 years later in 1989. There was a little bit of history there as well. So my father went on a student visa, and then in China back then, it was very difficult to get a passport. So it took I remember it took 3 or 4 years for us to get a passport. And once you have a passport, it's extremely difficult to get a visa. So the visa was very, very limited back then. But then in 1989, there was a Tiananmen Square event where the students were protest, and there were some issues. And right after that instant, the foreign government relaxed the visa restrictions, and there was lines around the Canadian embassy in Beijing, it circles the embassy, and you have to wait for 2 days to get in. So basically, you wait for 48 hours on the street, with a chair, with a plastic chair and everything. But they were granting visas. So I got my visa. I was 12. I was following my mom, so I got my visa in that process, and then got the visa. And so the 1984 student event is on June 4th, and I left China on August 9th. So I remember those days really clearly because those are pretty significant events. And so that actually taught me some really interesting experiences where moving between countries, etc. You don't really live in one country. There's a world out there. So my father. So when I went to Canada, he was still just finishing up his PhD thesis. So I remember attending his thesis, just watching him talk and stuff like that. So he already have a 12-year-old kid, and so I couldn't really understand very much, but I got a gist of it. And then so my father just always had more academic jobs, never. He was never an entrepreneur. So he was always an academic guy. So led a pretty simple life. So that's kind of Afterwards, afterwards, once he got a PhD degree, and then he settled down, and then he eventually went to work he studied geophysics. So so he basically crazy integration formulas to figure out where the oils are under the earth. So he worked for a couple oil companies. He actually went to Texas, Houston, to work for a couple oil companies, and then went back to Canada. So he actually he always had a more of an academic position. Yeah. So that's kind of my father.
And just going back a little bit, the most interesting thing, well, it's all super interesting, but something which really, really stood out to me was the job position as a McDonald's employee at 14. So that's insane because number one, just look at, how much you've achieved since then, but also, you are like under the working age. Like you said, the working age was 16. So when you're working in McDonald's, because people, it's really awful. But I mean, I don't know if you have obviously I'm from the UK, and there's this stupid joke in the UK about people working at McDonald's. That's just the joke that there is in the UK. I don't know if it's a global thing. I have no idea. But when you're working there, did you ever think that you would be able to achieve what you've achieved and, be one of the most successful people in such a growing space? And also, absolutely, like, you just can't knock people working at McDonald's. I think, working from 14, that's just insane. Good on you.
Yeah, so I never really thought I would be a billionaire. It just never crossed my mind. Even like 4 years ago, just like any time before 4 years ago, or even before 3.5 years ago, just never crossed my mind. So I never had such strong ambitions, but I do know that I want to be financially free. Well, maybe not at that age using that term, but at that time I probably just thought I want some more pocket money to buy some stuff that I want to buy. But I do know that I need to work for money. What's interesting though is at my age, so my dad is a pretty unique case and I was a pretty unique case in Canada. At the time, most of the people from mainland China to Canada, like student immigrants, they're much younger. So they're like 27, 20 something. My father's 40 something, approaching 50s. So I was 12. And so it's either like 20 something, like university grads, etc., applying for master students, and they have kids that are much younger. So like maybe like just babies. So there's very few kids from like at age 12 in Canada at that time. So my friends were they were Asians. They were like Taiwanese guys and Hong Kong guys in Vancouver. There's a lot of them. They do speak Chinese, and then there's the sort of Caucasians. Canada is an immigrant country, right? So there's people from everywhere from the world. So I was very tuned into the international sort of scene. So this is also why I'm very comfortable getting used to talking to people around different parts of the world. And then there's the Taiwanese guys and the Cantonese guys, they were all investing immigrants. So their parents are usually like investing a couple $1 million in Canada, and then to get the citizenship. And the Taiwan guys, typically their parents are doctors in Taiwan. They're making very decent money. They usually buy like a couple $1 million house in Canada and usually invest in some business to get the visa. So they were relatively rich. So those guys are driving like really nice cars, not super nice, but like, Volvos, sometimes Porsche. So I wasn't able to afford a car when I turned 16, got my driver license. I wasn't able. So for me, like I was in a very modest financial situation where like a lot of my friends are relatively well off. So I had that little bit of a comparison, but I never thought of becoming a billionaire. But I just wanted to like sort of be financially, just sort of be well off, and like I didn't want to be ranked super high, but just well off. So that's kind of the environment where, or at least the way I remember some of my early mentality. But kudos to a lot of my friends from then. Many of those kids worked in McDonald's as well. So the guys I hang out with, like the Taiwanese guys, Cantonese guys, the Caucasians, they worked in McDonald's as well. So like some of the guys were driving Porsche to McDonald's. So,
I love it. That's brilliant. That's so brilliant. So you mentioned financial freedom, right? So like that's this fancy term that we love to use. But back in the day, what did financial freedom actually mean to you? Did it just mean the ability to sort of like drive your Porsche to McDonald's? No, I'm joking. Or did it just sort of mean like literally, own your own assets?
I think I only understood that term much later, to be honest. So now, so back then it was just to earn some pocket money, so that just hang out with friends, etc. Much later on, I would say, like when I was starting to getting jobs, like from when I was in university, like getting intern jobs, I started to read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then thought about, what does financial freedom mean? So I learned about passive income at a relatively young, early age as well. So I was like looking at how do I generate, like, so that's the Rich Dad Poor Dad book. But then I think even until when I was 30 something, I think that's kind of when I slowly kind of had a relatively stable financial situation, etc. So, and then I think back then I would say, look, even like if you asked me 4 years ago, if you asked me what financial freedom means, I would say probably like $5 to $10 million is probably enough for most people. So look, if you have $10 million, above $10 million, you're not gonna spend all that money. Well, like depending on what you do, you could.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but like to maintain a pretty decent living standard, you don't need that much. Well, 10 million is not a small amount. So that's kind of how like I didn't really understand it at that young age, but like later on, that's kind of even 4 years ago, that would be my standard.
So, that's only 4 years ago, and Bitcoin is, I mean, what do we call it? 12 years old now, more or less 12 years old. Yeah. So what do you think your life would have looked like if, Bitcoin had never been invented? I mean, I know you were obviously in tech anyway, and you were already making huge moves anyway for yourself, but what would your life have looked like, if Bitcoin had never been invented?
I don't know. Yeah, that's a very tough one in a kind of a hypothetical situation. I don't know. I probably would try some. Like I knew. I'm a startup guy. After working at large companies, I was like, no, I'm not gonna be able to work in large companies. It's just a bit too slow. So I would be probably doing some tech startup, and maybe like today, maybe in AI. I tried social media, didn't do anything there, didn't do anything successful there. So probably today would be some AI stuff. Probably a struggling entrepreneur. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I just wanted to unmute my mic. It's quite loud here. But I mean, and you also mentioned passive income, and I think that's really an interesting point, because passive income is sort of something which I think everybody can achieve, but not everybody knows how to achieve it. So how did you have that penny sort of drop moment? Just because people often think they have to trade time for dollars, but that's not quite the case, is it?
No, that's absolutely not the case. So basically today, in Chinese, there's a very simple saying: if you're working for money, you have a very limited ceiling, how much time you can work. So even like, for example, even if you have a very high paid profession like lawyers, doctors, you earn very decent money. But the minute you stop, you will have savings. But the minute you stop working, you stop earning. Then that's not a very sustainable situation, and it's not scalable. So, but of course, if you're a doctor, you can start a clinic and hire people. But then, the minute you hire somebody to work as a team, etc., then you're not only working, you're not only trading your time to get money. And then if you buy an apartment and rent it out, then that's generating passive income. Ideally, you want the rent to be able to cover your mortgage payments, and so this way you have some positive cash flow. And the more of those situations you have, the better off you are. And so like I talked a guy off buying an iPhone 12 Pro Max like a couple of days ago on Twitter.
Good.
So the guy was debating between selling his B&B or to buy an iPhone, and obviously because he was so agonizing on Twitter, that must be a pretty significant amount of money for him. I said, look, if it's that kind of significant portion of amount of money for you, don't buy a depreciating asset, right? So you want to buy something that has potential to appreciate. So that guy's a very dedicated B&B supporter. So not difficult to talk him off that at all. And then the B&B price dropped today, so hopefully he's still. No, I'm sure he's okay. He's a long-term holder, so he's okay. And but I think people need to understand that passive income is really important. Like the minute that you have something generating income for you, or potentially have gains for you that you don't have to work yourself, the more of those you have, the better. So that's really important. So I think a lot of people don't understand that, and they just like they trade their time for money, and then they spend it. That's a very limited way to achieve financial freedom. That's a very hard way to achieve financial freedom.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And, sort of generating that passive income is something which I've sort of only recently come across. I mean, I'm only in my 20s, so it's something which that idea has recently just popped out, and I'm sort of like learning more about it and understanding how I can do that. I think it's such a shame though that we're not sort of taught that there's another way of doing things. We're always taught that we have to be in the system and be a product of the system and work for the industrialists and so on. But I won't go on. I want to know a little bit more actually about Binance. So like you said, you were sort of in tech before, but where did the idea come from? And also, where did the name come from?
Okay, so the idea is really not a new idea. I think almost everybody I met in the crypto industry, or at least every entrepreneur I met in the crypto industry, wanted to start a cryptocurrency exchange at some point. So the idea is really old, and talked about it in 2013. Joined the exchange in 2014, and then left that exchange. Thought about starting a new exchange in 2015. Thought it was a bit early, and then 2017. We thought the time was right. At the time, Poloniex and Bittrex were doing really not high volumes like in today's terms, but back then it was like pretty decent volumes, like a couple $100 million a day in trading volumes. And they back then, I think the fees much higher, like they were like 1% or something. So back then the industry was not small already. So 2017, we thought the time was right. The name Binance came in 2017. I didn't have the name before. So we had a couple of different names, and then I actually did come up with a Binance name. So like Bitcoin Finance, Bit Finance, Blockchain Finance, and then Binary Finance. Binary and Finance have the most overlap in the number of letters. If you replace the B with if you replace the F in finance with B, so that's I came up with that, and then the domain was just sold 2 months ago. So then we tried to talk to the guy, and then I think the guy actually only charged us like a couple $1,000. So we got the domain. So that's how it started. At the beginning, I wasn't even sure about the name. We had a couple of different candidates.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but worked out okay so far. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, this is just like a side point, I also think the colors are fantastic, absolutely brilliant. Yellow and black, like you guys are ahead of the time. Yellow and black are, just from a branding standpoint, yellow and black are sort of like a new duo. So I think you did great on that. But after launching in July 2017, so after 8 months, you guys actually became the biggest exchange in crypto. So how did you do that? That's something everybody is trying to do. I've got friends that are setting up exchanges, but 8 months, wow.
Yeah. So to be honest, when we first started, we thought we will get lucky. We'll be lucky if we can get into the top 10 within 3 years. So that's kind of the target that we had. So it's not that like we aimed for it right away, and we wanted to be the #1 exchange in the world. But so we actually didn't really have such aspirational goals or like really ambitious goals. But I do think that we just try to do what we're good at, and we try to do our best to provide the best product and service. So it's in my view, it's really basic. So when we first started, there's really only there's many crypto exchanges, but there's really 2 big ones. That's Poloniex and Bittrex, and both of them only have a PC version. And even on the PC version on the website, if you want to trade, you have to scroll back and forth. You have to look at the price on top and then scroll to the bottom to enter numbers. And then, so it's not a very, in my view, it's not a very good experience, to be honest. So we designed one full screen. You don't have to scroll at all. You can see the charts, you can see the history trades. So everything you need to do is on that screen, and you can trade. So that's like a user experience optimization. And also, we launched the mobile apps very quickly, and we also made our website work relatively well on mobile web version. And also, those 2 exchanges are only available in English. So basically, they were located in the U.S. and they just service U.S. users. It's a big market, but we thought that's like, well, U.S. has 20% of the global GDP. There's 80% GDP outside of US. So, and we were based in Asia, so we thought we want to target the other ones. So we launched 9 languages very quickly, and today we support 22 languages. So we were like product wise, we just thought there was there's a lot of slack. Well, there's a lot of room. There's a lot of like unclaimed territory that we can try. So we did that. We also had a very decent matching engines, really fast. Like it's noticeably fast even when you trade manually. Place an order, get a confirmation. It's really fast. So people like it. The other thing is service. So product and service is really basic. back in 2017, if before Binance, if you submit a sport ticket on any of the exchanges, you're probably going to be waiting for a month for the reply. And this is when you have money stuck on exchange or have some kind of issue on a financial platform,
terrible.
basically. So we thought that's kind of extreme. We can probably try to do better. It's actually pretty difficult to do. But we did set a target of maximum 24 hours for the response, ideally within an hour. And then we just hired a lot of guys. We wrote a lot of FAQs. We tried to make the system as easy to understand as possible. And we were servicing like a dozen languages back then, 22 languages now. So it's difficult, but we did do it. And then after that, a lot of other exchanges copied us. So now the service level in the industry is much better, which is good for everyone, which is also good for us because it brings more people in. So we were also the first exchanges to do a number of things, like the gas distributions, like if one coin uses another coin, like what people can now call staking or airdrops. We were the first centralized exchange to support that. Before that, if you have one coin who's generating another coin, the exchange doesn't distribute that second coin to you. We thought that's a pretty simple mathematical exercise that we can do and just distribute that. So we did that. We did that first with Neo, and that attracted a lot of the Neo community to us. So there's a lot of little things we did. It's nothing too magical. Everything's like pretty basic. And then just a lot of time on Twitter. People seem to like it. So that seems to work.
Yeah, well, I told you. I told you Twitter is, people love it. People love you for interacting with them. But that's really interesting. It's the little things, it's the little user experiences. It's that little I can't get my words out, can I? It's the little touches that you do. And I think that's really important. And actually, I love to hear how, a free market, competition and all this stuff has sort of raised the bar. So like you said, now people respond within 24 hours because you guys set that standard. So that's super cool. But with all of that going on, all these different languages and everything, how involved are you in the day-to-day runnings of Binance?
I'm really not that involved anymore. So like I can literally be off, I could turn off my phone. I could be off the internet for probably a week or a month, and Binance will be totally fine. I think a lot of users may panic because of just the mentality. But I'm no longer really involved on the day-to-day operations. We have a really strong team now, and the team size is not small either. We just surpassed 1,500 people globally. And including the angels don't get paid. They don't get paid a salary. So if including the angels, probably over 1,800 people now. So it's a pretty large team. They're very, very self-sufficient. We distributed teams, so everybody does their own thing and somehow it just works together. So I get involved in things when we gotta make so I don't even look at investment deals until the last minute. And they say, look, CZ, we're gonna invest a couple $1 million here. So okay, sounds good. So and then I get involved more now. I'm trying to learn more of the sort of how to optimize organizations. So I try to experiment with different ways. So I do try to talk to people more. But just like, hey, how's it going? Anything you want to talk about? Not specifically, hey, you need to do this and that. So I try to talk to people just more, just to see what ways can we optimize the organization. But like running Binance, really not and normally. So what happens now when something happens at Binance, like even today when there was some lag, some data center issues, I just get told what to tweet. So just CZ, you gotta tweet this thing. So, okay, tweeting it. So so I'm not really not involved on the day-to-day operations now.
I have a leadership question, actually. I know that you're not fully involved in it now, but obviously you were. So in terms of, running this successful business and this startup at the time and really, lifting it off the ground, how important, well, of course, leadership is important, but what kind of leadership would you say is important? Were you micromanaging? Did you empower people to sort of, make them feel like valuable members of the team? What kind of ethos did you install in the company?
Yeah, so I was never a micromanager, so I'm terrible at managing details, and I do give people a lot of freedom. So my style is I give people a lot of freedom, and they can make mistakes, they can fail businesses, they can fail projects, but as long as as long as they work hard and try hard. So my ethos has always been giving people a lot of freedom. And then I do, in the early days, I do set, even today, I still set the sort of general direction where we're going, like what things we should do or should not do, like just more on the rules side, not specific tasks and specific things, but just, okay, look, we should never hurt our users. So if this decision involves hurting our users or not, then don't, it's pretty obvious. And then I do think that finding the right people is really, really important. So getting the right team in place, and then making sure that they work together well, and making sure that the team is really passionate, and so I think getting the right people in is really, really important. I do think I do a decent job on that front, and getting the right people into the right seats, I actually do less of. Once you get people in, they find their own seats. Sometimes it's not ideal, but then whatever. I don't spend a lot of time on strategy, so this is something that's maybe a little bit counterintuitive. But for me, it was very clear this is the direction we're going. We don't spend much time at all on discussing strategy stuff. We focus a lot more on execution. So just like how do we do this thing? This is where we want to go, and how do we do this? So not so much on what we need to do or not, but more like look, it's pretty easy to figure out what to do, but just how to do it. In the early days, well, even now, I still do. I believe I still do lead by example. Even though I don't get involved, but I have like somewhere between 15 to 16 calls every day, just conference calls, phone calls to people. And then I work relatively long hours. I don't really call it work. I just view it as part of my life.
Yeah.
So I have calls at 11 p.m. Right now it's like so now it's 10 p.m. for me, 10:45 p.m. for me. But this is normal working hour. If I'm not talking to you, I'll be talking to somebody on my team or doing something. So even though I don't get involved in the operations, but I do talk to people. I'm always online. I'm always around. So people see that, and people and the guys who report to me directly, they all work those hours. So I can ping them like at 1 a.m. They do sleep usually from like 1 to 2 until like 7 or 8. So during those hours, sometimes we can't find them, but outside of those hours, we can always find them. I do lead I believe our team do have a very hardworking mentality. So I think the leaders should set the tone. For that, I think there's no shortcut for hard work. So other than that, I think that's pretty much. Other than that, I don't have a lot of other sort of secrets or good things, or like
wisdom.
Wisdom, yeah. So yes, I think it's pretty basic. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so many interesting things there. You mentioned it's all about getting the right people in, and I don't own a company like that, obviously, but just from my personal experience within work, it's so true. It's so hard to find the right people that you fit with, and you share a vision, and when you find them, you don't want to let them go, and you have to sort of like instill the right ethos so that they stay and they help build something amazing. So what's the vision for Binance then?
For Binance, I think it's pretty simple. So we really just want to help build infrastructure in this industry, so to help this industry grow. And the reason we want to do that is we want to increase the freedom of money. So I strongly, and I think our team all believes that if you look at history, any time that we're able to increase freedom of something without sacrificing other things, the human civilization, our quality of life improves. So from like freedom from slavery, freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of the information, so anytime we can increase those freedom. But today we don't have a lot of freedom on money. We get there's all kind of problems I won't go into. So that's kind of what we want to try to grow this industry, and we want to build infrastructure to help people use crypto more and have more access to crypto. And right now, the biggest application is obviously the exchange right now. But we don't view that as I don't think that's going to be always the case. There are many other infrastructure services that could potentially be built and provided, and we don't have to provide every single one of them. We want to provide a few good ones that we're good at. So potentially, hopefully, in the future, I don't know. Payments is a very obvious one that hasn't really taken off, to be honest. That's a cross-border remittances, even gaming. There's many different infrastructure services that we can try. We probably will fail at a number of them. Hopefully, we'll be successful in a few. So that's kind of the direction Binance is going.
I like that. Just do a million different things and one of them will stick, and just because, and it's kind of like when people start a company, they often say, it doesn't matter if all of the, you started 3-4 companies and they all failed, your fourth one might be the one which beats every company in the world. So you just don't know. But as a side point, actually, how did you first hear about Bitcoin? I read a funny story. Apparently you sold at your house for $1 million to put it all into Bitcoin in 2013. What on earth is going on here?
Yeah, so Bobby Lee, who was the CEO of BTC China, he was just about joining BTC China in 2013. That was in like June, July. So I play poker with him. So he comes to my house to play poker. Actually, him and his eventually later on investor, Ron Tao, who's a managing director of Lightspeed in China. Yeah. So we're playing poker, and they were saying, well, okay, no, he's going to quit his job from, he has a pretty decent job. So he was going to quit his job to join this startup with two guys, the two original founders of BTC China. He's going to become the CEO. And they're running a Bitcoin exchange. And he says, CZ, you should look into Bitcoin. And in fact, he said, you should convert 10% of your net worth into Bitcoin. You may go to, there's a decent chance you will go to zero, then so you lose 10%. There's a higher chance you will go 10x, so then you double. So I was like, okay, that's pretty serious. So then I started looking into it, and and then Ron Tao, Lightspeed Ventures invested in BTC China, pumping $5 million back then, a pretty large sum for the industry back then, and then. So I was like, okay, that's pretty serious. So I started reading about Bitcoin, started reading about Ripple, actually. Ron was also like looking at Ripple. I said, I should look into it. I did. And then, so I really liked it. And then, but the thing, so that was like July, starting July, I was investing a little bit. So I was buying a little tiny bit. I bought like one Bitcoin, which back then.
Where did you buy from?
Actually, I bought it on BTC China, actually. It was really hard getting money in, and then I also bought it. I also used Mongox. Mongox had a fiat channel in Japan, so actually I still have some money stuck at Mongox. But anyway, but I was learning and playing with it, and I really liked it. I come from a technology background, also a financial background, trading background. So I understand, and also like given like traveling between countries, I immediately understood the impact this could have. And then, but I wasn't sure if I was going to go all in, right? And then I went to a conference in December in Las Vegas. In that conference, there was Vitalik, there was like Charlie Lee, there was Matt Rozek, the same crew. But that was like a 200 people conference in Las Vegas. And I just thought that was a really nice group of guys. Back then, the industry is much smaller. There's much less debate and contention that you see on Twitter these days between different blockchains, etc. So I remember some guy was teaching me about Ripple back then, like how to set up the gateways and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then in the process, he transferred like $500 worth of Ripple to me. And then I said, well, now I learned it. Let me transfer this back to you. So I was set up. He said, just keep it, and you can send it to the next guy that you teach. I was like, well, that's pretty nice. So it was like a community like that back then. So it wasn't like a pure pump and dump or like so it was a really nice community. So after that conference, I went back, said, okay, I'm gonna quit my job. I wanted to do a crypto exchange back then in my previous startup, but the other funders or the other partners said, no, not sure. So I said, okay, fine, then I'm gonna quit, and then I joined this Bitcoin industry. And then a month later, I began to sell my house. So sold it about a couple months later. So it was early in 2014 I sold it. So this is when between July and December, Bitcoin price went from about $100 to about $1,300. And then it was coming back down, but fluctuating a little bit. I was like, oh no, I got to buy it quickly before it goes up again. So I bought at $600 average price roughly for that $1 million. It was pretty hard to buy that amount back then. Then price drops to 200. I stayed there for about 2 years. So I lost about 2/3 of a house for a long time. It was mentally stressful. But
you didn't sell, did you?
No, I didn't sell. I still have those Bitcoins today. So.
Oh wow! Yeah. Strong hands, CZ. You've got strong hands.
Yeah, so those are the Bitcoins. Those are the Bitcoins I have. So I never added more, and those are just the Bitcoins I have. So yeah, nice. So that's kind of how I got in. So yeah.
That's so insane. I love that. The guy was like to you, oh yeah, just do 10%, and you're there like a few months later. No, I'm going to do my whole house. I don't want this house anymore. I'm just going to give it up, basically.
Yeah, well, yeah, plus I quit my job too. So I was jobless for like a month or so.
Oh yeah, so you gave up your house and your salary. I love that. Yeah. That is dedication, and you didn't even sell. So with that in mind then, you're obviously very dedicated to Bitcoin. Your career is Bitcoin. Where do you think it's going? I'm not going to ask for a prediction. It's a bit unfair. Give one if you feel like it. But what are your thoughts in general on the market? Because we thought we were going to see all-time highs yesterday, and we're sort of back down to 16.8, which in my opinion is fantastic numbers. Can't be crying at 16.8 at all. Yeah. But what are your thoughts?
Look, I think short-term price predictions are extremely difficult. No one can do that. But I think longer term. So this is also why I held on to the Bitcoins I have. Just, if you look at the things long-term, look, the industry has so much more room to grow. I think looking at any number today, right? So today I think there's probably less than 0.2% of population in crypto. So it's got at least 500x to go just by that number of that single metric. It might be 0.1% to be honest. And also, the Bitcoin, the future financial world with crypto is going to be much bigger than the fiat financial market size. This is similar to, you should not evaluate Uber's market size using taxi market size, because Uber can do a lot more that taxis cannot do. And you should not be evaluating, I don't know, an internet company using a previous type of company's market potential. And also, so crypto can do a lot more in terms of applications, use cases, etc. I think it's going to be much much bigger than the current financial. The future crypto financial economy is going to be much bigger than the current fiat one. So there's tons of room to grow. And also, blockchain can be used outside of financial applications as well. Land titles, anything that requires proof, supply chain management. So voting, yes, voting. So like basically, there's a lot more room to grow. So I think there's like a couple of thousand times room to grow. Whether that's Bitcoin or not, nobody knows. But in the short term, I don't think Bitcoin is going anywhere. So if you look at a day-to-day basis, yes, markets will have retractions. Market will have fluctuations. That's how markets work. That's when you put like, I don't know, a couple million people together to trade. That's what they do. That's just math psychology. They don't trade it according to a linear line. So. So like in terms of predictions, I think the industry will get a lot bigger. So I'm not worried about the short-term price fluctuations at all. So that's also why I was able to hold. And that's also why I think this industry will be the fastest growing industry for the next few decades. So and we're not just here for like 2 days. So we want to be here for the next 50 or 100 years. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
My final question then for you, it kind of just linked off the back of that really. Do you think that crypto can actually replace fiat? Seriously, a lot of people say, we see it working side by side. Governments are creating, central bank digital currencies. So what do you think?
I think it's going to take a while. So it's definitely not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to happen too quickly. I think anything that deals with a mass population, especially like if we're talking about like everybody in the world, there's like 200 different countries, a few billion population. It's going to take a while. So I think it's going to be like at the most, it's going to be like one slowly rising, one slowly decreasing. I mean, people still use postal mail today. People still use email today, even though instant messaging is pretty popular now. So I mean, there's bicycles, there's cars, there's trains, there's airplanes. So people still use quite a lot of those different things. So I don't know which situation it's going to be, but more likely it's probably going to be more similar to postal mail versus email, though. So I think there will be, I think most likely, by any logical understanding of cryptocurrencies, it is much better than fiat. it has a lot of properties. It overcomes a lot of the difficulties or shortcomings of fiat currencies. So it does have a lot of advantages. So, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. There's also there's a learning curve for mass population alone, even if it's 100% better. And there are also some deficiencies in cryptocurrencies as well. Most people don't know how to hold cryptocurrencies securely today. Most people cannot, like, even if you give them a hardware wallet, they don't know how to securely store the backup. So the application is not quite there yet for mass adoption. So it's going to take a number of years, but those issues will be overcome. So yeah, I'm very bullish.
Good. Yeah, I agree with you. User experience is something which we sort of need to up our game on, but it doesn't happen overnight. I totally agree with you. CZ, I want to thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. We always hear about you. You're the founder of Binance, but we never get to learn about you. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time. I know it's late, back all the way in Asia, where you are. So thank you so much for coming on. It's been such a pleasure.
Thanks, Layah, thanks for having me. It's normal working hours for me, so anyway, not a problem.
It is what it is.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Yeah.
Thanks so much, and thank you.
Yeah,
thank you for everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next week on Thursday. Bye-bye.